Your eyes do something at night that you've probably never stopped to notice. Walk from a lit room into a dark one, and for a few seconds, you're almost blind. Shapes blur, edges vanish. You reach for a wall that isn't where memory says it should be. Then, without you doing anything at all, your eyes start adjusting. 10 minutes in, shapes return. 20 minutes in, edges sharpen. Give it long enough, and you're moving through that dark room like it's lit, not because the room changed, but because you finally stayed still long enough to let your vision catch up to what was already there the whole time, waiting to be noticed. It's a strange thing to sit with. The furniture didn't move, the door didn't shift. Nothing about the room was ever actually hidden. Your eyes just hadn't caught up yet. Most of what people call a sudden realization works exactly the same way. That's the exact process happening over your head right now, except it isn't your eyes adjusting to a room. It's Venus and Saturn, sitting on opposite ends of the same line in the sky, forcing a kind of seeing you don't get when everything around you is comfortable and well lit. And unlike a dark room, you can't just wait this one out from the doorway. Today is the day the adjustment finishes, whether you were braced for it or not, whether you noticed the sky was doing anything at all. Here's what's actually happening, without anything stacked on top of it for effect. Venus and Saturn are in exact opposition today, sitting within a fraction of a degree of each other on opposite sides of the chart. Venus just past 13 degrees Libra, the sign it rules. Saturn just past 13 degrees Aries, where it's been moving backward since late July and won't turn direct again until December. Venus governs warmth, closeness, beauty, and what you believe you're worth. Saturn governs structure, time, and the parts of any situation that don't move just because you want them to badly enough. When two planets sit exactly opposite each other like this, it works the same way a full moon does. Both sides of a single issue get lit up at once, instead of one half staying conveniently in shadow where it's easier to ignore. There's also a quieter detail worth knowing. The moon is currently forming a bridge between the two of them, easing the angle rather than sharpening it into pure conflict. That matters because it means today isn't built for blow-ups or dramatic confrontations. It's built for clarity that arrives calmly, almost gently, if you actually let it instead of bracing against it. One more real detail worth knowing, because it's the kind of thing that quietly explains why Venus has felt so noticeable lately. It reached its farthest visible distance from the sun in our sky less than a week ago, close to peak brightness, close to half illuminated the way a half moon is, bright enough to notice, not yet fully revealed. Saturn, by comparison, is roughly 50 times dimmer in the same sky tonight. One of them announces itself. The other one requires you to actually be looking for it before you'll ever find it. And that difference in visibility is basically the whole story in miniature. It's worth saying plainly too, none of this is a prediction about your bank account, your health, or anything that deserves a doctor or a financial advisor instead of a video. This is a pattern of attention, not a forecast of events. The sky sets a mood. You still write everything that happens inside it. This isn't rare, and it isn't your fault, and it isn't some cosmic verdict handed down specifically for you out of everyone else on the planet. Venus and Saturn line up this way roughly every 12 to 18 months, so if today feels unusually loaded, it isn't because you were singled out for a reckoning. It's because Saturn happens to be retrograde right now, which means whatever surfaces today isn't new information arriving out of nowhere. It's old information that's finally been given enough light to be looked at directly, maybe for the first time in a while. That's the part worth sitting with. Not something is about to happen to you. Something that's already true is about to become visible. The way a shape in a dark room was always there before your eyes adjusted enough to actually find it. 7 places tend to catch this light today. None of them are dramatic on their own. All of them tend to matter more than people expect once they actually stop and look instead of scrolling past the feeling. You probably won't relate to all 7 equally, and honestly, you're not supposed to. This isn't a checklist you fail for skipping 5 of them. It's more like a room with 7 lamps turning on at slightly different times. Whichever one lights up first for you, right away, without effort, is usually the one that actually needed the attention most. The first is the difference between a relationship that looks good and one that actually holds weight. Venus wants things to feel easy. Good photos, easy conversation, the version of closeness that photographs well from the outside looking in. Saturn doesn't care how something looks. It asks what happens when nobody's watching, when the plans fall through, when one of you is having the worst week of the year and has nothing charming to offer in return. A connection can pass every Venus test and still fail the Saturn one, and most people don't find out which kind they built until a moment exactly like this one forces the comparison. Maybe it looks like realizing you know exactly how someone takes their coffee, but have no idea what they're actually afraid of. If a relationship, romantic, platonic, family, doesn't matter which, keeps clearing the easy bar, but you've never actually tested the hard one, today tends to hand you a small, ordinary opportunity to test it. Not a dramatic confrontation. Just one honest sentence you've been avoiding. Or one moment where you let someone see the version of you that isn't curated for their benefit. The insight underneath it isn't that easy connections are worthless. It's that you can't actually know which category a relationship belongs in until you've watched it under bad lighting at least once on an ordinary day with nothing dressed up for the occasion. The second is quieter and harder to catch because it usually doesn't announce itself as a problem. The gap between being loved and being useful. Venus wants to be adored. Saturn built its entire identity on being reliable. Put those two in opposition, and a specific question tends to surface. Do the people around you actually want you, or do they want what you consistently provide? It's an uncomfortable question, because most people can't answer it cleanly. You've spent years being the one who shows up, who remembers the birthday, who fixes the thing, who absorbs the mood in the room before anyone else even notices it's shifted. Somewhere in there, being valuable, quietly replaced being loved, and the two started to feel identical. Maybe it shows up as the small flicker of anxiety you feel the one time you can't help someone. A sense that your welcome expires the moment you stop being convenient. They aren't the same thing, though. Today tends to make the difference between them briefly, uncomfortably visible, not to punish you, but because you can't correct a pattern you've never actually seen clearly in the first place. The distinction matters because usefulness has an expiration date built into it, and love isn't supposed to. If the only version of yourself you've ever let people meet is the capable one, today is a reasonable moment to wonder what would happen if you let the tired, unfinished version show up instead, just once, and watched who actually stayed. Not as a test to punish anyone who fails it, just as information you've genuinely never had before, because you never gave anyone the chance to earn it. The third is obligation dressed up as loyalty, most often inside family. Saturn rules duty, Venus rules affection. When they oppose each other, the two get separated instead of blurred together, and a specific question tends to surface about at least one relationship you've long filed under family, so no negotiation. Is this something you actually want to keep showing up for? Or is it something you keep showing up for because leaving feels unthinkable, even dangerous to your sense of who you are? Those two things get treated as the same obligation for years, sometimes decades, sometimes an entire lifetime, without ever being separated out. They were never the same thing. You're allowed to keep choosing something out of real affection. You're also allowed to notice that some of what you call loyalty is actually just fear of what happens if you ever stop performing it on schedule. Naming that difference honestly, even just to yourself, doesn't obligate you to change anything today. It just means the next choice you make about it will actually be a choice instead of a reflex you never examined. Duty carried consciously, on purpose, tends to feel completely different from duty carried by default, even when the actions themselves look identical from the outside looking in. The fourth shows up in whatever you make, build, or produce, professionally or otherwise, paid or not. Venus wants the finished, polished version people can admire without asking how it got made. Saturn cares about the actual labor underneath it, the drafts, the failed attempts, the version that wasn't good enough to show anyone yet and maybe never will be. Most people only ever let others see the Venus half. Today tends to nudge you toward letting someone see a rougher edge of the process, an unfinished piece, an honest, "I don't know if this is any good," a version of your effort that hasn't been smoothed over for presentation. It rarely goes as badly as the fear predicts. Usually, it just makes the work, and you more believable to the people watching it happen from the outside. There's a quiet original point buried in here that's easy to miss. Polish doesn't actually build trust the way most people assume it does, no matter how much time gets poured into making something look effortless. Process does. People believe effort they can see the seams of far more than they believe a result that arrived looking effortless. The fifth lives in friendship, in the low hum of resentment that builds when you keep saying yes to things you don't actually want to do. Venus wants harmony badly enough that it will overpay for it, showing up when you're depleted, agreeing when you disagree, staying quiet to keep the peace intact, even at your own expense. Saturn eventually sends the invoice for all of that, usually at the worst possible moment. Today has a habit of surfacing exactly where that invoice has been accumulating. A friendship where you always accommodate and rarely ask for anything back. A group chat you engage with out of guilt rather than genuine want. A yes you've been meaning to walk back for months, but keep swallowing instead, because the conversation feels too small to justify starting. This isn't a push to burn anything down. It's a nudge to notice where a boundary got skipped so consistently that skipping it started to look like your entire personality. Worth remembering, the people worth keeping around are rarely the ones who need you agreeable. Most of the time, they're just relieved to finally hear what you actually think, and the friendships that genuinely can't survive one honest sentence were probably never built to last anyway, no matter how long they'd already lasted. The sixth is the quiet voice you use on yourself when nobody else is listening. Venus wants to believe you're doing fine. Saturn keeps an honest record whether you check it or not, and today tends to put the two side by side without warning. Notice closely the specific exact words you reach for the moment you make a mistake. Whether the sentence in your head sounds like something a fair, patient person would say to someone they respected, or whether it's sharper and colder than anything you'd ever say out loud to another person you cared about. That gap is usually invisible because you're the only one who ever hears it, day after day, without anyone else able to check the tone. today tends to turn the volume up on it just long enough for you to actually catch the wording, which is the first real step toward changing it instead of just absorbing it. You don't have to believe the kinder version instantly. You just have to notice honestly that the harsher one was never actually accurate. It was just familiar. And familiar gets mistaken for true far more often than it should. Most people would never let a friend talk to them the way they quietly talk to themselves at 2 in the morning. That mismatch alone is usually worth sitting with. The 7th is the hardest one to catch because it hides inside something that looks like health. The difference between rest you actually needed and rest you performed so nobody would accuse you of slacking. Saturn respects effort. It has no interest in exhaustion as a personality trait or a badge you wear for sympathy. Venus, meanwhile, quietly enjoys being seen as someone who's always doing something worthwhile with their time. Together, they tend to expose whether you actually rested this year or just filled your downtime with things that look productive enough to justify existing. The errand-running weekend, the relaxing that's actually 3 unfinished tasks in a trench coat, the vacation you spent answering messages so nobody would think you'd disappeared. Real rest doesn't need an audience or an explanation to justify itself. If yours has needed one lately, that's not a character flaw. It's just information, arriving on time, the same way everything else today tends to. A useful, simple test to run on yourself honestly. Picture the last time you truly, fully stopped. If your body was still, but your mind was quietly rehearsing the next task, that wasn't rest. It was just stillness, wearing rest's clothing. None of this is a warning in the way that word usually gets used. Nothing catastrophic is encoded into a planetary angle, and no chart decides what your day is worth or punishes you for missing what it's pointing at. What actually shifts today is smaller and more useful than that. The difference between something true, staying comfortably unexamined, and that same true thing finally getting looked at directly. The way your eyes finally resolve a shape in a dark room once you stop rushing through it and let the adjustment finish on its own schedule instead of yours. The relationships, the loyalty, the effort, the self-talk, the rest, none of it changes because a planet moved somewhere overhead today. It becomes visible because for once, the conditions gave you enough stillness and enough light to actually look at what was already there the entire time, waiting. That's genuinely good news, even though it might not feel like it at first read. A problem you can finally see clearly is a problem you can actually do something about. A problem that's still sitting in the dark just gets to keep costing you quietly, a little at a time, without you ever being able to name exactly where the cost is coming from. You don't need to fix all 7 of these today, and you don't need to treat any of them like an emergency waiting to happen the second the sun sets. Pick the one that made your stomach do something when you read it. That's usually the one actually asking for your attention, not the loudest one on the list, not the one that sounds most dramatic when you say it out loud. Sit with it for a few minutes before you decide what, if anything, you're going to do about it today. Nothing here needs to be solved by tonight, and nothing here needs an audience to be real. If it helps, say it to yourself plainly, the way you'd explain it to someone you trusted. This is what became visible today, and here's what I'm going to do with it, even if what I'm going to do is nothing yet. Even if the only honest answer right now is, I need more time to look at this clearly before I decide anything. If this kind of thing is useful to you, real astrology explained without the fear tactics, grounded in what's actually happening overhead instead of whatever sounds dramatic enough to get a reaction out of you, stick around and subscribe because there's more of this coming, and it tends to land better once you've started catching the pattern for yourself rather than waiting to be told what it means. You get to decide what you do with what becomes visible today. Nothing here is a countdown, and nothing here is out of your hands, no matter how the title made it sound. Some things just needed a little more light to be seen clearly for what they actually are. And now that they finally have it, the choice about what happens next was always going to be yours anyway. It always was, even on the days it didn't feel that way, even on the days a countdown or a warning made it sound like time was already running out on you. It wasn't. It still isn't. You just finally have enough light to walk through the room without guessing at where the furniture is.